Episode 57 BW January 16, 2025 Hostage returns and ceasefire and California crop residue burning ends. In episode 57 BW some good news along with an economic threat to both the United States and Canada. 1 United States negotiated hostage returns and ceasefire in Israel. 2 California crop residue ban begins. 3 Canada Readies tariffs on $105 billion of U.S. products if Trump hits first main content. 1 United States negotiated hostage returns and ceasefire in Israel. 1 United States this afternoon Biden appeared flanked by Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony. Blinken. Good afternoon, he said to the press, and it's a very good afternoon because at long last I can announce a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. Substack letters from an American RAWSEP View. The return of hostages and ceasefire in Israel is an example of the competence and relevance to the needs of the world, as well as the needs of the American people that the administration has brought for the past 4 years. The Biden-Harris administration has also performed with competence and relevance to the needs of residents against with smoke emission particulates by offering through the U.S. federal government heat pump rebates of up to $8,000 based on a sliding income scale which have been offered in many U.S. states so far, including the state of Wisconsin, where the editor of RAWSEP resides heat pumps, which in 2025 can work down to 40 degrees below zero and lower electricity bills. Immediately are the best and now cheaper alternative to indoor residential wood burning for home heating. Besides the excuse of cost, some indoor residential wood burners say because they are not connected to electricity they cannot use any home heating device except a wood burning stove. That second excuse is also being eliminated by the Biden-Harris administration because federal funds have been allocated to extend a smart electric grid to all rural areas. Wood burning emits 90% PM2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micron size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM2.5 and CO2 as the fossil fuel. Coal burning. Wood burning emits 450 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel. Natural gas burning. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. January 15, 2025. After more than 15 months of conflict that began with Hamas's brutal massacre of October the 7th, more than 15 months of terror for the hostages, their families, the Israeli people, more than 15 months of suffering by the innocent people in Gaza. Fighting in Gaza will stop, and soon the hostages will return home to their families. The elements of this deal were what I laid out in detail this past May. Biden said that plan was embraced by countries around the world and endorsed overwhelmingly by the UN Security Council. It has 3 phases. Phase 1 is a 6-week ceasefire in which Israeli forces will withdraw from all the populated areas of Gaza and Palestinians can return to their homes. Hamas will release the women, elderly, wounded, and American hostages it holds. During the next 6 weeks, Biden said Israel will negotiate the necessary arrangements to get to Phase 2, which is a permanent end of the war. The ceasefire will continue throughout the negotiations, even if they take longer than 6 weeks. Once Phase 2 begins, the remaining living hostages will come home, and all remaining Israeli forces will be withdrawn from Gaza. In Phase 3, the final remains of hostages who have been killed will be returned to their families, and a major reconstruction plan for Gaza will begin after thanking members of his administration, public servants, and first responders across the country and around the world, U.S. service members and their families, Vice President Harris and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and their family. Biden offered his eternal thanks to you, the American people. 2 California crop residue ban begins. 2 California 20 years on California's burning ban comes into force. Air quality news. January 13th, 2025. RAWSEP View. Diplomatic language to coax stubble burners in India or crop residue burners in California is used in this article is tiptoeing around the issue really needed. Apparently so, but the author of the legislation ending by banning California crop residue burning is a victory that the author is careful to state with thanks to the former crop residue burners themselves. It may be easy to be so gracious when winning. The winning is the most important thing, and if crop residue burning ends, then there is not further blame to state. In public RAWSEP View, it was wrong to burn crop residue simply because some misguided people continued to believe it was a tradition. Can we hopefully look at crop residue burning in California in the rearview mirror, hopefully while bicycling or driving a fully electric car within view of the now pristine air quality above the beautiful fields of California. Top excerpt about the crop residue ban written in 2003 in the California State Senate. Former State Sandine Flores, the San Joaquin Valley Democrat who authored the legislation and until recently served on the Air Resources Board, called the milestone deeply emotional. He initially pushed for an immediate burning ban, he said, but has come to appreciate that true progress often requires compromise and patience. Farmers needed time to adopt new technologies and practices, and giving them that time has made this transition more sustainable and lasting. What's most gratifying now is knowing that this moment is definitive. There will be no delays, no loopholes, and no turning back. RAWSEP. Top excerpt about how the California author of the crop residue ban got through the 22-year wait. The original bill was introduced by then Senator Dean Flores, who joined the California Air Resources Board in 2016. Speaking to the Fresno Bee, Flores said, "My sole goal has always been to eliminate agricultural burning, a vestige of the past that I remember vividly from my childhood in the Central Valley. Growing up, I often wondered why those plumes of fire and smoke were allowed to darken our skies. It symbolized an outdated practice that needed to change, and I've carried that vision with me ever since." RAWSEP. Top excerpt about the similarity of crop residue burning in California to crop stubble burning in India and other parts of Asia. Crop burning is a well-known air quality problem in Asia, but the problems in the U.S. are much less widely reported. RAWSEP. Top excerpt about financial compensation to support former crop residue burners as they stopping burning. The financial impact of the ban on the farmers themselves has been softened by the provision of $180 million to fund alternatives to traditional burning methods. RAWSEP View on how the former crop residue burners are allowed to use instead, which RAWSEP is shocked to learn include another method of solid fuel burning rather than letting residue lie in fields and decompose or taking the crop residue to a recycling plant to be recycled. RAWSEP View is that air curtain burning still produces 30% of the air pollution currently emitted by crop residue burning. RAWSEP had hoped that it would be required by crop residue burning not be replaced by other solid fuel burning. Just do not burn wood to begin with. Tradition is not a reason if that reason produces logically avoidable air pollution. If true clean alternatives are used, one of the technologies many of the farmers and growers have turned to is air curtain burners, a large metal firebox that uses a fan to create a curtain of air that trapping particles to ensuring they are burned completely. Burned, an air curtain burner can reduce the emission of Particulate matter by up to 70%. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates of 501c3 non-profit organization, January 13, 2025. In 2003, a bill was passed that aimed to eliminate the practice of agricultural burning in California's San Joaquin Valley. After years of postponements, it has finally come fully into force. Intense close-up of a hay fire with visible flames and smoke rising in the outdoors. Farmers turn to burning for a variety of reasons. Burning crop residues after harvesting, getting rid of orchard and vineyard prunings, removing weeds, preventing disease, and controlling pests. Back in 2003, the original intention was that the ban be gradually enforced, leading to the burning being fully phased out by 2010. There was, however, a provision within the bill that the deadline could be postponed if there were no economically feasible alternative to the burning, almost inevitably given the existence of such a provision. Applications for the deadline to be postponed were granted year after year. In 2021, it was finally agreed that the law would be phased in, with large farms the first to be affected, and a near-total ban coming into force at the start of 2025. As of this month, the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District can only issue burn permits for certain crops and to prevent the spread of disease. In 2021, these renewed efforts reduced the amount of waste being burned by San Joaquin Valley farmers from around 1 million tons to 480,000 tons. By 2023, this had dropped to 122,000 tons. 3 Canada Readies tariffs on $105 billion of U.S. products. If Trump hits first, Canada has drawn up an initial list of 150 billion Canadian dollars, $105 billion of U.S. manufactured items that it would hit with tariffs if President-elect Donald Trump decides to levy tariffs against Canadian goods, according to an official familiar with the matter. RAWSEP View. Canada is our traditional ally. In this case, it is a RAWSEP View. Is best to continue to follow this positive tradition that benefits both the United States and Canada of being allies in war and peace and in trade. As an example of one modern scientifically supported similarity between the two countries during the Biden-Harris administration, Canada is echoing the United States program of providing heat pump rebates, which provide a clean energy alternative to air-polluting indoor residential wood burning. United States tariffs on Canadian goods could very well hurt economies of both countries. RAWSEP top excerpts from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Last week, Trump mused aloud about using economic force to eventually turn Canada into a U.S. state. Doug Ford is quoted as saying, "When Donald Trump comes at us, he's not going to say, well, let's not worry about Ontario, they're good people, or Alberta. He's coming full tilt at Canadians as a whole." Ontario Premier Doug Ford is the Premier of Ontario, the Canadian province, which is the heartland of the Canadian auto industry. Doug Ford arrived at the meeting wearing a blue hat emblazoned with the words "Canada is not for sale," and said he was a strong believer in retaliatory tariffs. "You can't let someone hit you over the head with a sledgehammer without hitting them back twice as hard, in my opinion," he said. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates of 501c3 non-profit organization. Bloomberg, January 15, 2025. The list is a draft and would come into play only if the Trump administration moves first. More tariffs from Canada might be added later depending on what the U.S. does. The products on that initial list weren't disclosed. Canada imported $487 billion of U.S. goods in the 12 months to November, so the retaliatory tariffs would cover nearly a third of the value of the products the northern nation buys from its southern neighbor. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the premiers of Canada's provinces met in Ottawa on Wednesday, January 15, 2025, to plot a strategy. Premiers of 12 of Canada's 13 provinces and territories agreed to a statement saying they will work together on a full range of measures to ensure a robust response to possible U.S. tariffs. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Canada has the critical minerals needed to fuel the transformation of the U.S. economy. If the United States don't get them, the critical minerals from Canada, they'll get them from China. Alberta provides most of Canada's roughly 4 million barrels of daily oil exports to the U.S. Those shipments account for more than half of U.S. crude imports.